Hi, everybody. Welcome back to This Would Know. If you're watching on Patreon, welcome back. We had some technical difficulties, but we figured it all out. If you are listening wherever you get your podcasts, you don't know what that means because history is written by the victors.
And Montgomery Sutton is the victor!
And we have conquered the internet so we can make the truth whatever we want it to be. Welcome back. And
I'm a little scared now.
that's part of the fun. And today on This Wouldn't Know, we have an actor, a stage manager, a boxer, all-around badass, talented on a, dare I say, quixotic level. It's Becca Kaplan. Hey, Becca.
Hello. At least it wasn't on a Napoleonic level.
How's it going?
Things are good. Things are good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We were just talking before the show, and not during any other moments that happened. That
Oh, hi, friends. Oh, this drink is going to taste so good. in my
Monty's here
belly.
with a well-deserved drink for no reason whatsoever. He just wanted one.
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
Nothing happened.
No Herculean struggle happened beforehand.
Yeah.
So you just finished a show,
Yes.
right?
Yes, I did.
So for those who do not know, Becca was our stage manager for Romeo and Juliet this summer as part of our Common series. Was incredibly capable and just wildly talented during the whole thing. What's the last show that you just finished?
So I just wrapped Barefoot in the Park, which was put up at Queen's Theater. I think it's called the Corona Park. It's the one by Met Stadium.
Yeah,
The
Corona.
old
Park.
World's Fair site?
Yes. Yeah, their big globular statue is right in front of the theater.
Oh, right on.
Yeah,
That's
it's part of
awesome.
our directions of how to get there. Because guess what? It's a 16-minute walk through the park.
Yeah, I looked up how to get there from my house. I didn't have the time to make it out, unfortunately, but I saw it. I was like, oh, it's deep.
Yeah.
It's deep in the
like,
park.
I loved working there, but it's a trek, especially when you do 10 of 12s and I'm getting out at like midnight.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Did they have a van or anything to bring you from the train?
No,
Oof.
no.
I know,
Wow.
because Titan Theater Company also works
works out of there, yeah.
And Andrew Garrett, who's worked with us, is doing Christmas Carol with them right now. And they have a van.
Oh, they got a van that takes
So
you.
you got to let them know about the van.
I got to put it in a complaint.
But how was the show?
It was fantastic.
Yeah?
I learned a lot worked with great people. I like shows that it's a Neil Simon, so it's funny, it's witty, but my director is very he's very cognizant and aware, and he's like, hey, this is great and funny. It's also a little racist and sexist. Let's change that.
So how did that process work when you came up against some not so subtle racism? How'd you address it? How'd you change it?
Well, when the first read through, it was kind of given a blanket statement like, hey, if you have a problem with any of these lines, bring it up. Let's talk about it. Let's make sure. So a lot of like the racist ones we just cut because they weren't, they were throwaway jokes, as most stupid racism is. So they weren't integral to anything that was going on in the show. They're just these stupid jokes. So he was like, all right, let's just get rid of them. And also there's this whole fight at the end where the husband comes home drunk and starts like propositioning her, and in the movie it's quite rapey. Like she's hiding herself and saying how scared she is, and like so we just changed the blocking and made it more goofy, and like he doesn't actually ever touch her. He doesn't even go after her. Like throughout the entire show we have her being the person in charge and standing up for herself. So there's enough context choreography wise that I think it changed the tone.
Yeah, it's so interesting because doing the plays of Shakespeare and his contemporaries, we never come up with anything like
Never.
racism or sexism.
never
I bet
or
not. Very progressive.
xenophobia or yeah.
No, not at all.
I mean, as a Kaplan, I've noticed that the Jews are treated so well.
Oh yeah.
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 The Merchant of Venice is a wonderful play about the well-meaning treatment of the Jewish people in that time.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's just a documentary.
Yeah, it's just a documentary of like how great a time everyone was having. What a time! I think that's actually one of Shylock's lines. Is just "What a time to be alive." It's great. I'm having a dandy of a time here. So you were able to change some things around to be a bit more like conscious of the moment. And how did that work? How well did it translate for your audience, for your actors? Like, how did that alter the chemistry of the show itself?
I thought it translated very well for the actors. But I suppose I have more insight on that because I'm with them for the process.
Sure.
And they're talking out their lines and talking out their motivations. Actually, we would have discussions about how, because it's like there's the older couple and the younger couple. So we had two different kind of generations of actors involved. And we had an intimacy director brought in. It was really interesting hearing the older actors talk about like, never would have even thought of this before.
So you were working on the technical side for this show. You worked on the technical side for our Romeo and Juliet as well. But you're also an actor in your own right.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember actually when we interviewed you, I was curious because you also had like this body of acting work, but it seems like you're doing more technical things lately. Where's that interest come from?
It's a mix. Part of it's practicality. I'm a white, average-sized brunette girl. Like, there's a million actresses like that, and it's in terms of directing and stage managing, a little bit less female.
Yeah,
and so there's more jobs. But also, I think my personality fits stage managing and directing a bit more than
in what
acting.
way?
I'm a little bit more reserved and a little bit more pulling people together to make an end product and helping them realize their ideas and pulling together lists and organizational tidbits in the background. Whereas acting, sometimes you really need to be a bold personality. I think as I gotten older, I've felt that a little less, but I do remember like my ex-boyfriend was like, I don't think you should go into that because you don't have the personality to be an actress.
What?
Yeah,
what does
that even mean?
Because I'm not.
Maybe this is why he's your ex-boyfriend.
Well, because I'm a little bit more shy. I'm not the person who's going to try to take the center of attention, which I don't necessarily think is actually a requirement for being an actress.
Absolutely
I think that
not.
comes from a very
Absolutely
outside
Not even a
personality.
little bit. Yeah.
Sometimes the only way you can express yourself is by being in someone else's shoes.
Exactly. I like working within boxes and I like being given permission as a person and as an actress. When I act and someone gives me parameters, I feel like I can go so much further and it's a much more comfortable space for me to work in. I don't like setting my own boundaries because I have this real sense of other people and other people I'm working with. So I just like being given boundaries, which doesn't always happen when you act. Whereas in stage management and directing, there's kind of these natural boundaries written in, and then you give the boundaries to other people.
Has that always been a part of your personality?
It's always been a part of my personality. I've just recently started being able to articulate it.
Interesting?
Because I remember, I have a distinct memory of like my first real connection with this is I was Sarah in Guys and Dolls in my 8th grade production, and I was really struggling with playing drunk. And
Did you not have enough life experience
at 13? Not yet.
You weren't a lush at
sense memory
13.
process.
You got to get out and live more, man.
I know. I started too late. But yeah, I had the drunk scene and like the flirtation. But as soon as they were like, well, you can do this, like you're okay to sit on his lap here. Or you're okay to do this. It was like, oh, okay. And I had those boundaries. I had that permission. And then it was fine. It's like as soon as I'm given that this is okay way to touch you, this is an okay thing to do, I'm comfortable with it.
So on that intimacy direction, which is clearly such an amazing and important and very spoken about thing right now, you mentioned that you had one on this production. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about what that looked like, who the intimacy director was, and then also, because we also attempted to bring those principles in without an intimacy director per se in Romeo and Juliet, and what things were really assisted by having that presence in the room.
Yeah. So his name is Marcus, and I really, really enjoyed having him come in. I think the other actors did too. They did a couple of exercises first, like pairing off and going through different types of touches, and also this like yes, no game about taking each other's places, and then doing things like that. And then he would break it down and analyze like, well, why did you feel uncomfortable saying no to someone taking your spot? It's that simple. It's that, or why did you feel comfortable saying no to me? Like when they did that game, the only person anybody else said no to was him. They didn't say no to any of each other. And he was like, well, just kind of breaking down why that is and what is stopping you from being comfortable saying no and when permission happens.
We did that I did a workshop on intimacy in original practices and Shakespeare a few weeks ago. And the intimacy director we were working with is named Ashley White, it sounds like Marcus might be involved with IDI.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the main intimacy director program right now. We did the exact same game and it was so fascinating. And what's interesting is that there were also people in the group who were like, my instinct is to say no, though. I wasn't fighting pleasing people. I kept finding it hard to say yes and give up space. And
fascinating.
But then they were beating themselves up for it. And the point for them was like, why are you upset about that?
Yeah.
It's just yes or no. It's just taking places in a circle.
No, that was exactly it. As soon as someone did say no, they apologized. And he's like, why are you apologizing? There's literally nothing wrong with saying no and like breaking those ideas down.
It's 50% of the creative possibility of the game.
Yeah. It is in the instructions that you are allowed to do that. But we have such a hard time with that. Yeah, and then they had games where you were paired with a partner and you had to ask the other person, can I tickle the side of your cheek? Different things. And they could either say yes or no. And to also purposely do one that you don't think they're going to say yes to and try to see how it happens with that. And there's a lot of laughter. There's a lot of uncomfortable giggling. And you could definitely, this is really where it became clear the different generational thing. I mean, everybody was very open to it and liked learning from it, but you could tell that some of our older actors, not that they didn't think it was important, but that it was very much making them question past ways they've behaved, past things that they have to think about. It's interesting. We had different, because I really noticed this compared to how we did it with Romeo and Juliet, is that it was very much, in this production, they didn't want to make it a choreography in terms of do it for this long, this many seconds at this intensity. It was more, these are my boundaries that I don't want to cross. This is the general shape that we're going to do.
Did they do containers?
I don't think so. What's that?
So one of the things that Ashley was introducing, which is an IDI thing that I had heard about but hadn't worked with yet. The idea of the container is like, may I touch you?
Yeah.
So you might say that, I've just met you, Monty. Today we have to play lovers, but I feel totally safe with you touching anywhere from my elbow to my shoulder. Like I'm not going to be offended. I'm not going to feel like I'm being assaulted. I'm not going to feel like as long as you're in that zone, you're pretty good to go. Right. And so then without blocking anything, you could actually have some responsiveness and I know that I'm safe as long as I don't move my hand anywhere else. You have and in the moment that it goes outside of that boundary, you also know that this actor is out of line. And without you don't have to feel uncomfortable. It's just like, oh, that's not what we agreed upon.
Yeah.
And I was like, that seemed like such a beautiful mid-ground to me of a choreographed thing and this infinite room for spontaneity and play.
That was essentially it. I don't think he called it containers, but it was that exact idea of this is where you're allowed to touch me. And within that, that's where we explore. Yep, exactly. Because they wanted to be able to keep, not quite improv, but keep a freshness and ability to not feel like they were doing 1, 2, 3 steps.
The reason this cropped up for me was you mentioning 8th grade, and you said being given the structure of being told to sit on someone's lap. Then that permission is given, that expectation and trust and respect is put specifically in place. And I feel like particularly working in the improvisational way that we do, it's so interesting in the intimacy stuff that it, even outside of intimate moments, it can create a world of specificity and trust that allows for much bolder play and experimentation.
It's funny to me, or I find it interesting that you found your way into this production that was, it sounds like, very focused on making sure that there was a structure and a boundary in place when that seems to be the direction that your own creative process is going, that you naturally, that you gravitated toward that project. I want to talk a little bit more about what you were saying earlier, that you came to direction and stage management and sort of working behind the curtain as a means of practicality. So that's not totally fair. I didn't come to it like that. I just decided to pursue it more as a career because of that. Interesting. Okay.
I came to it in my senior year of high school. Now that I'm thinking about it, it was actually because it was an easier way for me to have more power and more involvement without being dependent on someone casting
Now
me.
the real Becca comes out.
There it is.
Maybe it is that.
It's all about the lust.
It's all about the power.
And was that in high school? Was that directing or was that stage managing?
Directing. I was the assistant director for our last 2 years.
Oh, awesome. Did you study directing and stage management after high school, like in college?
No, I ran a student theater company.
Really?
Yes. And like I was chair starting my sophomore year. My junior year. I was on the board starting my sophomore year. And I directed and I produced for them. But I didn't study, like I didn't take classes besides, a lighting design class I did for a certain, credit. I was a communications major.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you did communications for your undergrad, and then we've talked before about how you got your master's abroad in London, right?
Yes.
Studying what?
Film. I was in the film studies department.
Interesting.
It's theory based, more academic based.
Okay.
Not practical. It wasn't like an MFA.
So even then there's that recurring theme of boundaries. It's like we're going to be delving into film, but it's going to be more of an academic discussion, not so much like acting for film and TV, like not acting for the camera.
Right.
It's very much just like analyzing how to craft those particular stories.
Why was that more interesting to you?
I guess in part it's just because I even though I knew of MFAs, it didn't really quite cross my mind. And because I was always an academic, I always tested well. I always enjoyed writing. I enjoyed research. So in terms of pursuing a career that seemed probably prestigious enough and credible enough to suit like my parents and things like that, becoming a professor and having a doctorate seemed more viable and more on that route than getting an MFA. I don't know. I guess just part of me didn't understand getting an MFA right out of college. And so in my mind, it was if I wanted to pursue production, I would get a job in production.
At that point, then the goal being, I'm gonna get that PhD. I'm gonna be a professor of film studies. What angle or aspect of studying film was so compelling to you?
I loved critical analysis and bringing in gender and sexuality and identity politics. I liked it was actually kind of calls back to the communications background where you see how media affects mass society. This idea that what we put on screen and how we put it on screen can shape our society and how society shapes what we put on screen, and that byplay and what that means for how we accept people and how we view sex, how we view relationships, how we view gender.
Is that still applying to your work today? Do you find ways to be able to explore that?
More and more, yeah, I think so. I think it helps being in New York, and I think it helps surrounding myself with people who are open-minded and have different ideas about gender and sexuality. At least because a lot of what I read opened my mind up to, if not understanding better, to recognizing how much I didn't understand. And I think that really helps going into different productions and working with different people.
Yeah, I mean, especially as a director, right? Like both as an actor, the worst experiences I've had working with a director, and as an audience member, the worst productions I've seen. Feels like our directors who feel like they understand exactly how the world should work,
right?
Yeah.
Exactly what the moral should be, rather than the play being an investigation, even for the captain of the ship.
Yeah. Yeah. When I directed stuff in the past, I usually had ideas about what I wanted to say, but I didn't have the path to it locked down. And I very much am a proponent of letting my actors have leeway and tell the story. And I want to know what they feel in the character because I'm looking at the big picture. I'm not delving into one character in as much depth as that actor better be. So I want to know what their comfort is, and I want to know what they feel right doing and what they can bring to production.
What's interesting to me about that is you said part of the reason that you were drawn to the production side of things is you felt more comfortable with a set of boundaries or structures in place. So when you're running a room, what steps do you take with your actors to make sure that they feel safe and that there are a set of boundaries in place for them? Are there specific things that you like to do when it's your room? Anything that you like to address, set up?
Can I also add to that and open it up to, in addition to those things, what you were also describing in terms of increasing their ability to have real shaping hands in the story? Like, how do you empower them to take some more of that responsibility onto their own shoulders?
I've always tried, especially as stage manager for smaller productions, because I feel like that's when I probably have the most authority. A lot of it's verbal. It's not really a step-by-step thing. I basically, if something comes up that it looks like might be questionable, I ask them their opinion. I talk about it. I just try to create an environment where they feel that they know I'm going to care about something like that. So it's not really a step-by-step thing so much as when things come up, even if it's a little thing, make sure I ask what their thoughts are on it. And if they're comfortable with something, stopping something before it happened, like if we're about to go into a kiss scene or something, stopping and talking to about, just kind of making sure I insert a dialogue of that things are not set in stone and should be talked about and conversational.
You are habitualizing an environment of communication and accessibility.
Yeah.
Making sure that everybody knows that you are a person, if not the person, in some cases that they can come to, and that they are encouraged to do so.
Yeah.
What other positive impacts have you seen that permeate a room once you've set up that kind of culture and environment?
People just relax and are willing to explore more. I think when people feel that they have someone they can go to outside of the action of it, who doesn't have that creative investment, I think.
Right, because your only goal is that the show is great.
Yeah.
Whereas everyone else may be like, I have this thing I want to say with this element that I'm doing.
Exactly, exactly. And then I think once you have that, I mean, everyone's different, but I think for a lot of people, once you have that, you're more comfortable expressing yourself, you're more comfortable trying new things because you know that there is that person there who will put a stop to something if it's going too far or if it's not what everyone's comfortable with. You also have, I mean, it's not just about your own comfort zone. I feel like a lot of people are more concerned about pushing other people's comfort zone and not realizing. And so knowing that there's someone else there who will stand up for the other people makes you more able to push other people's boundaries and to explore things with someone else because you know that they also are protected and what you're doing isn't bad.
A lot of people aren't going to jump unless there's a safety net there.
Yeah. Absolutely. When it comes to your nature to be a bit more reserved and like shy at first, how do you square that with the position that you take on in these productions as somebody whose job it is to directly resolve conflict?
Yeah, that's hard. It's interesting. I had shied away from stage management for a while because I didn't think I had the personality. In terms of all of the stage managers I met in college were very type A, very, I don't want to say confrontational because it wasn't a negative thing, but they had no problem telling you exactly what you needed to do and when and how and where to go. Like very overt, very not shy about that kind of thing. And because I'm not that, I was like, oh, they're going to run all over me. And I'm finding that's not true. You don't have to be that. It actually, in a lot of ways, is much more pleasant for everybody when you have to be organized. You have to know what needs to happen when. But you can do so in a way that is not overly strict and overly demanding. And it actually feels like it creates a much nicer working environment. Look, you have to be able to think on your feet and pull the trigger with stage management because when things go wrong, unfortunately, I don't have 24 hours to solve when the curtain doesn't go, stuff like that.
Right.
But those aren't as common or as stressful as we think they need to be. Actually, being relaxed and just thorough makes for those much less. Those mistakes happen much less. I will say I've noticed I've started using I've since stage managing, I have actually become more confident and bold in my day-to-day life. Yeah. I've started using my stage manager voice to corral my drunk friends.
Please can you please give us an example?
All right, you guys, you are going to listen to me right now. All right, we're going to go up down the street. So 2 blocks left. Go. I'm not even saying words, but I was just remembering.
If I were drunk, I would have believed those were words.
Yeah.
If I were, thank goodness I'm not.
The actor instinct in me was like, thank you, 2 blocks.
Thank you, 2 blocks.
Walk us through a little bit what your ideal room looks like. Like you are the captain of this particular ship. What kind of work is it? What kind of people are you working with? What kind of environment are you trying to foster? And how do you or do you think about the way to bridge your own internal gap with balancing the academic insight and the act of actually playing and experimenting through a particular set of boundaries?
So I'm definitely an analysis-based director. It probably pulls in from my academic roots, but that's always how I used to run my rehearsal rooms. Is I would start off with a table read, and then really break down motivations and character backgrounds. A lot of talking to the actors about what their ideas are, why we're hitting these spots, what we want the show to say. Maybe not all up front. A lot of that's more breaking things down overall and getting a basis, and then kind of seeing where we go to and explore. So, and I'm usually I don't like it when we stop every 2 seconds to get into an exact movement, or this kind of blocking there, or this kind of blocking there. I'm usually let's play out the scene once, talk about it. If I have a specific direction, if I ever have a specific movement, I will let you know. Actually, that's not. It's a mix, but usually what I'll do is I'll give them positions and have them run through, and then if I want something to change, maybe stop them then. But
Thank God for you, Becca. I think I've been in a couple of rooms recently, not professional rooms, where it has been this like every comma, it's stop, shout, go back, do it, go back, do it, go back, do it. And it's like, for me, I'm like, there was no way in which to stifle anything that I have to actually bring to your vision more than doing that. Like, I'm just trying to like do that level of the video game that I've done 7 times, and can I jump at the right time, and am I doing that?
Right.
no, it was like I had an experience recently was similar, and it was giving exact movements and exact bits, and I hate that. If you have a bit you want to do, I'm all for it, like as a director, because part of that is what you're giving. You do have ideas about something funny or like a bit or something, or choreography that is part of the job, but it's also seeing what other people want to do and can bring to the role as well. There's a reason I cast you and hired you, and it's not because I thought you'd give me word for word what I have in my mind. It's because I only have a vague outline in my mind, and I want you to fill it in with your ideas. So yeah, it's a lot of I tend to talk things out. I tend to do a mix of experiment and talk things out.
So all this amazing stuff that you're doing, and with all of the thoughtfulness that comes behind it from both who you are, how your brain works, and your background in academia, if you got to pick the you 5 years from right now, what would that person be doing? Like, what would the balance look like when you are having full financial security and safety, and you get to choose jobs not based upon which one helps you get them groceries, but purely what feeds your soul? What would that look like, do you think?
I would definitely want a hybrid career, because I like doing multiple things. I would want to act in some film or television. That's really what I love doing. Specifically some kind of fantasy, supernatural, sci-fi kind of thing. I like the fantastical, the dreamlike, the things I would never experience otherwise. And I also find that they tend to be great platforms for kind of semi-angsty, like, emotionality. Like, because you can, in these extreme worlds, you can go have these extreme reactions and personas that you don't have to. A smart talking political show is fascinating and fun and witty and funny, but it's also controlled and very much like day-to-day life and worrying about how you appear, and you have to be these proper set lines. Whereas fantasy has a little bit of that effervescence, like fluidity that you don't always come across in life. And I would definitely want to be directing more. I love stage managing, but I miss directing.
Becca, thank you so much for coming on the show.
If any of you out there really want to work with her, I would suggest that you write a darkly comic fantasy musical.
Yeah.
Yes, please send me all your songs.
I think you can do this.
When people send you their dark comic musicals, where on the internet can they find you?
My Instagram and Twitter is Becca_K1017.
There it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we come to the portion of the show where we read your listener responses to the previous episode and then offer our recommendations for things that we are playing, reading, writing, just media that we are consuming that we find interesting that we thought you should know about too. Monty, why don't you start us off?
So, this week, surprise, surprise, our wonderful dear friend Amber Elby, who is at Amber Elby on Twitter, tweets out that because only those who live stream the This Would Know podcast on Patreon can see my comments, I decided to tweet a photo of this one. I added the words, a photo. Then she puts in parentheses, y'all should support at Rude Grooms on Patreon to join the conversation. And I personally agree. Do you agree, Daniel?
I agree.
Great. Awesome. Patreon.com/Rude Grooms. Join us. Watch the live stream. Then the photo that she includes is hashtag Mr. Amber LB, trademark Daniel Kemper, said he wants to see the Cats trailer with the Mandalorian sound dubbed over it.
Oh my God.
So here's the deal. I don't think it exists yet. I'm going to do a search and make sure it doesn't. If it doesn't, I have to drive to North Carolina and back here 2 more times because I'm currently having the extraordinary joy of directing a play of mine called Ruins at the Gilbert Theater in Fayetteville, North Carolina. So I don't have a whole lot of time. But I also, hashtag Mr. Amber Elby, want to see... But I also, hashtag Mr. Amber Elby, want to see that. So if it doesn't exist, and if I can find the time before next week's episode, I am vowing to you now, I will do it.
Hold him accountable, people.
Well, no, I've given myself several caveats. You won't know how long my drives take or how rehearsals are going.
Hold him accountable, people.
God damn it. This is why I hate you, Daniel. What are your recommendations this week, asshole?
So last week, I recommended a book. The week before, I recommended a TV show. This week, I am going to recommend both because they are adaptations of the same thing. I'm going to recommend both the Netflix show and the book from which it was adapted, The Haunting of Hill House. If you've not seen it, if you've not seen the show on Netflix, it is fantastic. It is super good. It's super creepy and really unnerving. I loved it so much that I went out and bought the book by Shirley Jackson after seeing the series. And the book
is amazing,
The book is amazing and entirely different. Mm-hmm. Such a different tone.
Is it episode 6 that has that track? It's like not quite one. It's like 3 shots for the whole episode. Is that episode 6 or episode 7?
I can't remember exactly.
I think that's the best made episode of television I've ever seen, just from a technical standpoint.
In any case, the show is phenomenal. The book is incredible. And the TV show takes from the source material but manages to be its own thing, so much so that in my mind, the book and the TV show are 2 separate things.
100%.
Yeah. So I'm going to recommend The Haunting of Hill House in all of its different variations. Watch it and then read it, or read it and then watch it. Do it in reverse order than the process that I did, and then tweet or DM me on Instagram your reactions to having it done in that way.
Hot twist. Have you seen the original Haunting of Hill House or The Haunting?
No.
Because so The Haunting is a film with a lot of famous actors. The only one I can remember for sure is Catherine Zeta-Jones. Mm-hmm. That was not very well reviewed. However, I love this movie.
Nice.
And it has less to do with the book than the TV adaptation does, which is impressive. But the original film, Haunting of Hill House, is also extraordinary. So, if you've enjoyed those 2 so far, I think you should, if you can, watch The Haunting last, because it's some 90s fun. Mm-hmm. And Catherine Zeta-Jones is just always like, she does not always choose great projects, but she's always wonderful, whether the project is wonderful or not.
Sure.
And it's perfect 90s horror. But I would love to hear what you think about the original
challenge
film
accepted.
Translation.
Okay.
Similarly, the first week I recommended a podcast. The second week I recommended a streaming television series. This week I am recommending a book, but I'm going to recommend in particular the audiobook of Malcolm Gladwell's newest, Talking to Strangers. I listened to this on the drive down to North Carolina to start rehearsals this past Friday, and I normally do a chapter of an audiobook and then 4 or 5 of my latest podcasts. That's what I tend to do when I'm doing long distance traveling. This book was so enthralling that I could not bring myself to choose something else to listen to. I started it and I did not stop until I was done, about 9.5 hours. And I'm a huge fan of Malcolm Gladwell, but even for those who are not, this book takes on, Talking to Strangers is a great title, but what it seemed to me to really be about is our inability to engage with humans whose experience we undermine through lack of exposure to empathy and experience. It deals with so many stories that have caught my attention in the news over the past decade. And it brings out new facets of that, like some of them, which I was very obsessed with. Sandra Bland, Jerry Sandusky, Amanda Knox, the list goes on and on and on. And it's consistently, in stories that I thought I knew everything about, I was discovering new things and new elements. And it was consistently challenging me to reconsider things and to engage more with people and moments around myself. If you're a fan of Malcolm Gladwell, I certainly can't recommend it highly enough. But even if you are not, I think this is the one Malcolm Gladwell that I think everyone should listen to or read. And if you have anything to say to us or recommendations to share, please email us at thiswouldknow@rootgrooms.com or
tweet at us on Twitter at thiswouldknow, or DM us and follow us on Instagram at thiswouldknow. Also, tweet, hashtag, DM us on Twitter and on Instagram at Rude Grooms. Thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of This Wouldn't Know, presented by Rude Grooms. My name is Daniel Kemper. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at the Daniel Kemper.
And I'm Montgomery Sutton. You can find me on Twitter at Montgomery Sutto, because my name's too long. And also on Instagram at Montgomery Sutton, because they're really kind and don't care.
Tune in for next episode where we'll be sitting down with actor and yoga teacher Rachel Schmeling. Bye, everybody.
Becca's listening. I don't know.
I'm going to listen.
If you were on Patreon, you would see Becca's reaction. And then you would know
I'm
that
very
Becca's gonna
excited
listen.
about that.
Becca's very happy that Rachel's going to be
So
here.
get on to patreon.com/rudegrooms. You can watch our live streams, chat with us. It's super fun, especially when there are no problems at all, like tonight, where there were no problems.
Absolutely flawless from a technical standpoint.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of This Wouldn't Know, hosted and produced by Daniel Kemper and Montgomery Sutton. Original music is by Kara Arena. This Wouldn't Know is brought to you by Rude Grooms, a Queens, New York-based theater company creating epically intimate theatrical experiences in public spaces, non-traditional venues, and new media. Learn more at rudegrooms.com or follow us on social media at Rude Grooms and at This Wouldn't Know.